Ken, there's 1.1 million Americans that are going to colleges and universities, patriots, under the GI Bill because of Tim Walz. One of those was JD Vance. He should thank Tim Walz because that's how he got to Yale. But instead of thanking him, he's attacking him, and that's just wrong.
Now, look, what really bothers me about Tim Walz, it's not even the positions that he's taken, though certainly he has been a far left radical. You know what really bothers me about Tim Walz as a Marine who served his country in uniform? When the United States Marine Corps, when the United States of America asked me to go to Iraq to serve my country, I did it. I did what they asked me to do it, and I did it honorably, and I'm very proud of that service. When Tim Walz was asked by his country to go to Iraq, you know what he did? He dropped out of the Army and allowed his unit to go without him, a fact that he's been criticized for aggressively by a lot of the people that he served with. I think it's shameful to prepare your unit to go to Iraq, to make a promise that you're going to follow through, and then to drop out right before you actually have to go.
I've got Patrick Murphy, the Honorable Patrick Murphy, with me today. I got the Navy shirt just for you, Patrick Murph, former acting Secretary of the Army and Governor Walz's roommate as freshman members of Congress. Murph, I hate that we have to talk about this ridiculous stolen Valor charge because I would love to just catch up with you, but this has got to make your blood boil. Knowing Governor Walz as you do, knowing what a 24-year Army career means, to have shots like this come in from someone like JD Vance. How does it make you feel?
I mean, Ken, it's beyond a pal. I mean, when JD Vance was announced, I'm a proud Democrat, but I didn't attack his military record. To have Donald Trump and his cronies, Donald Trump, who got 5 deferments, question Tim Walz. Tim Walz? I mean, come on. Ken, and whether you're a veteran or not, right, as an American, as a patriot, as someone who loves our country, when you have incredible human beings like Tim Walz, who joined the Army at age 17 at his farm in Nebraska, his dad's a Korean War veteran, goes and serves for 20 years in our Army, and retires honorably, right? Our nation is attacked on 9/11. He goes back in and re-enlists, even though he retired, goes back and serves another 4 years, deploys with his unit in Operation Enduring Freedom. The Army sends him and his team over to Europe. He serves, he comes home, he retires again. A year later, he runs for Congress. And for these jokers, these animals, to attack Tim Walz, Command Sergeant Major Tim Walz, is a disgrace and, frankly, un-American.
You touched on something that I think needs to be called out. You referenced JD Vance's service, right? None of us went after his service when he was announced. He was a public affairs officer, honorable service as far as we know in Iraq. He wasn't on the front lines. Most of us weren't, right? And he did his time and he got out. But if we were applying the same standard to JD Vance that he wants everyone to apply to Tim Walz, he could have re-enlisted and gone back with his unit. The thing that gets me angriest is that he knows better. He knows just how hypocritical he's being, and he knows that people like you and me did not attack him for his service, did not try to find any weak spots in that because we honor service. I think part of this is that he is part of a party now and a ticket that dishonors service, that called you and me suckers for having joined and our buddies who died on fields of battle losers for having given their lives.
That's right. People, Americans, got to look at, he attached himself to Donald Trump, who himself got 5 deferments during the middle of the Vietnam War, allegedly for bone spurs that he doesn't even remember which foot they were on, from his family physician, and has the audacity not just to attack Tim Walz, but how about the 4-star Marine generals that served in the Trump administration, who they have attacked, whether it was General Mattis, whether it was General Kelly, who not only gave service in combat, but lost his son, the ultimate sacrifice, who was killed in combat. And then the turn on the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff saying he should be court-martialed, that if he's president, he's going to bring him back in. I mean, if you're an American, you can't have that person set 1 foot for 1 day back in the White House. I mean, come on. We need patriots who will put our country first over this partisan BS.
You're referring to the former president's suggestion that he would bring General Milley back in. In that quote, he suggested the death penalty was appropriate. I mean, beyond the pale, as you said in your first answer. I'm so glad you're on offense, calling out the former president and his 5 fraudulent deferments. We know they're fraudulent because Michael Cohen testified to that. But for those who are unfamiliar with how an Army career works, especially 24 years in the Guard, can you just give us some context on Tim Walz a year before his unit's going on deployment? They don't even know that, right? They haven't been activated yet. His paperwork is in. What's that process like so that the uninitiated can understand that this was in no way leaving his men and women behind?
Yeah, so let me just set the table straight here, because most folks don't know this. I had the incredible opportunity not just to serve, in the Army and serve, in the invasion in Iraq and stuff like that, serve our country as a professor at West Point, but our Army is 1 million soldiers, Ken, and the majority of our 1 million soldiers are actually in the National Guard and Reserve. Tim Walz gave 20 years in the Minnesota National Guard, served honorably, was retired. Our nation, though, was attacked on 9/11. Tim Walz, as a patriot American soldier, a former soldier, says, listen, I'm going to get back in the game. I got to defend our nation, does that, deploys with his unit in Operation Enduring Freedom to Italy, serves there, because that's where the Army sent his battalion, comes back home because he's there in 03 and 04, comes home in 04, the next year retires, and then runs for Congress after he retires. The reality of it is this: he becomes a member of Congress, and these jokers try now to attack his military service. These jokers, Donald Trump and his cronies, who don't know what service is all about, who don't know what the Constitution is all about, that as an American soldier, as an American sailor like you were, as a Marine, you take an oath to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And I will tell you, for these animals to attack Tim Walz and say the words, call him a coward, to say the words, say stolen valor, whoever is saying that does not have the personal integrity and honor that bestows an American citizen, that bestows someone that has a genuine respect for those of us who've worn the cloth of our country. Shame on them. And it's not about Election Day on November 5th. Someday they will have go in front of our Creator on Judgment Day and answer for what they're doing to a patriot like Tim Walz.
Hi, everyone. It's Ken Harbaugh, and I need to take a short break here to ask all of you watching and listening for a quick favor. I am starting my own YouTube channel at team_Harbaugh, where I'll be posting videos regularly, including bonus content. It's a great place to find both Burn the Boats and Against All Enemies episodes, including the full archive. That's going to take a while to upload, but it's all going to live there. I could really use your help growing the channel. Please consider subscribing today. The link is in the show notes, or just search for team_Harbaugh on YouTube. I really appreciate the support. Everything we do here depends on you. Thanks so much. Can you talk about that phrase, stolen valor, which I have never heard a veteran throw around so carelessly, so wantonly as JD Vance? It is, it is the worst thing you can accuse someone in the military of, and it's just thrown out there like an afterthought. Can you talk about the significance we place on the idea of stolen valor?
Well, listen, you have Donald Trump and these political cronies around him that are pushing JD Vance and pushing folks to, attack Tim Walz. And the great thing about Tim Walz is he loves his country. He loves families in Minnesota. He loves all American families, and he's doing his best to make it better. And yeah, listen, Ken, you and I bust each other about Army versus Navy, Marine Corps. We're brothers and sisters. We all rib each other. But for someone to question Tim Walz's character, to say stolen valor, he never, ever said he served in combat. He never said that, he didn't serve in any capacity that he didn't serve in. He served and had a distinguished career as the command sergeant major, as a member of Congress, as the governor of Minnesota. By the way, 5th best in job creation, the lowest unemployment in America. I mean, come on. And then now they're trying to attack him about the riots that happened all over the country when Donald Trump himself, at the president at the time, said Tim Walz did a great job. They're throwing the kitchen sink at Tim Walz. But for a fellow veteran to call Command Sergeant Major Tim Walz a coward, to say those words, stolen valor, as if he lied about his service, he never did. He never inflated his service. He never inflated his record. He was a humble, selfless servant. He's one of our brothers, man. And they know better. They know that. But they are so desperate for power. They are so desperate to put a great American like Tim Walz down. We got to stand up. If you're an American watching this podcast, you better rise up and stand up and defend Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, because that's what a real American would do.
Amen, Murph. You referenced that period when Minnesota was experiencing horrible civil strife, and the president at the time, Trump, called Governor Walz and said, "You're doing a great job." I want to roll that audio right here, and I'll get your reaction to it.
Governor Walz was on the phone, and we spoke, and I fully agree with the way he handled it the last couple of days. I asked him to do that. Get a lot of men. We have all the men and women that you need, but people aren't calling them up. You have to dominate. If you don't dominate, you're wasting your time. They're going to run over you. You're going to look like a bunch of jerks.
Murph, I think you're absolutely right that they are grasping at straws, because they know they're up against, in Tim Walz, a man of deep integrity and enormous competence as a governor. They're up in Kamala Harris against someone who had a career prosecuting people just like the former president. And it appears they are terrified of this ticket that the Democrats have put together against them.
Yeah, and listen, I get it, Ken. They're flailing, right? And they're desperate. And it is what it is. And I get thrown a kitchen sink, but you can't question the integrity of Tim Walz. You can't question the fact that, he's done a great job, decades of his life in public service, delivering for our families, keeping our streets in Minnesota and in Minneapolis safe. I mean, and the facts, Ken, we want leaders of character in these political public service positions. And when Donald Trump and JD Vance know that there was riots when they were in charge, and when Donald Trump, and in Minnesota, them saying that Tim Walz did a great job, and they know the fact that those riots happened when they were in. When Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are, helping lead the country, there aren't riots anymore, because they know there's good people and bad people. It's not about both sides. It's about good people that believe in law-abiding citizenry and not doing bad things, and the other side. And we don't want skinheads. We don't want neo-Nazis, marching around in places like Charlottesville where Donald Trump's like, oh, they're good on both sides. Not when there's skinheads on the other side. No, sir, I don't think so. And when you look at just the sheer facts, Ken, and the American people know this, the facts are this. The crime rate in Minnesota and across America has dropped 15% under Biden-Harris than it was under Donald Trump. They don't like the facts. They don't like the hand that they were dealt, but it's their hand, their cards that they got. I apologize about that. I'll say 5 Our Fathers, 5 Hail Marys, 5 Glory Please. But they don't like the fact that they're flailing because they don't know how to govern. They don't know how to lead. And that's why we need a new generation of leadership in Kamala Harris and Tim Walz and so many other great Americans stepping up to the plate to lead our country in a new direction.
Murph, I want to get just one last insight from you about Tim Walz as a person. You were his roommate there in DC, and I'm sure you can give us some insight on how he is as just a dad and a colleague. He's been described as America's dad. That comes across, but he's also a command sergeant major. I mean, that's like a command master chief in the Navy. And even as an officer, I was terrified of that guy. Like, Tim Walz manages to be a badass and a softie at the same time. Tell us about Tim Walz, the human being.
And that's why, listen, Ken, as we, you and I and so many others are part of this post-9/11, the post-9/11 generation. Tim Walz is one of the leading voices of our generation. Tim Walz is a barrel-chested American patriot. And as you said, as my roommate, like he's a guy that's always going to be on time, is always going to be looking the part, and is a great family man, loves his wife, Gwen, Hope, and Gus, his 2 kids. And I will tell you, it's not just about who he is as a person, which is like truly someone who has a servant's heart, as the Bible says, but someone who gets things done, is willing, to bang the table, to fight for our brother and sister veterans, for our everyday families. And he's delivered. Ken, when we were going through orientation, that's when we first got to know each other. We got a really crappy apartment that was the cheapest one we could find. And I will tell you, we were brothers in Congress. And I was like, all right, well, listen, I'll go in armed services. I'll take the lead to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell. He went on House, what's called HVAC, the House Veterans Affairs Committee, to take the lead on the post-9/11 GI Bill. Because of patriots like Tim Walz, Ken, there's 1.1 million Americans that are going to colleges and universities, patriots, under the GI Bill because of Tim Walz. One of those was JD Vance. He should thank Tim Walz because that's how he got to Yale. But instead of thanking him, he's attacking him, and that's just wrong. But also, when I said, when I wrote the Murphy Amendment, which was the repeal of the Don't Ask, Don't Tell, we had kicked out 13,000 troops just because they were gay, and it was wrong. And it was patriots like Tim Walz who stood up and helped give those closing arguments. So now that if you're part of the LGBTQ community, you can serve openly in our army. Or military. We're not going to throw you out because of who you love. We just want people who are going to do the job. And it's caused patriots like Tim Walz that put his job on the line. A conservative district in Minnesota, when he could have looked the other way and people would have given him a pass, he said, no, I'm taking the oath to the Constitution. I'm going to make our country a more perfect union. And he's done it time and time again. And that's why we need to stand behind the Harris Walz ticket.
Amen. Well, Murph, we're going to help get that word out as soon as America gets to know Governor Walz. I think they're going to love him like we do. Great having you on. Let's do it again.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate you, man.
It's Ken Harbaugh with the MeidasTouch Network, and I have some great news to share with you. Apple TV's #1 feature documentary, Against All Enemies, which I co-produced with Sebastian Junger and Ben Meiselas, is coming to MeidasTouch. Many of you have seen it already. Thank you for making it such a huge hit. Now this entire MeidasTouch audience can see it for free without commercials for a limited time. Please help spread the word. If ever we needed to understand the threats posed by violent extremism and election denialism, it's now. Thanks for all your support. Here's the trailer for the MeidasTouch network premiere of Against All Enemies.
3, 2, 1.
There are places in our military where we are trained to start and fuel insurgencies.
That's the same kind of they've been doing their whole career. Now they're doing it here inside the United States.
Anybody who says that this can't happen in a worse way, either they're ignorant or they're part of the problem.
Today, domestic terrorism is the greatest terrorist threat facing the United States.
The CIA has this tool where they measure levels of insurgency, and if you just apply the tool to the US, we are in an incipient insurgency.
Do you want your house back? Take it!
How did I end up on one side of that door? And my fellow veterans, how did they end up on the other side of that door?
If you believe the country's under attack, you have a certain set of skills, you're a force multiplier.
They're coming.
It's going to end up the people versus the government.
If you're armed, then you're prepared to defend your family. And if you're not armed, you're dog meat.
When you can convince people that their leaders are not valid, then you give them the excuse to overthrow that leadership.
And that's not new.
The issue is that the people that we are identifying as extremists, they're identifying as patriots or freedom fighters. It almost sounds like I'm talking about terrorism right now.
Everyone becomes more violent in the aftermath of warfare. What we don't know is what happens when we're talking about a 20-year war.
I hope that people are scared, because being scared motivates people.
This is how countries fall apart.
Oh my God!
I could see a civil war.
And this fight that's far from over, and it may never be over.
I, Lisa Fon,
do solemnly swear
the Constitution of the United States
against all enemies,
Foreign and domestic.
So help me God.
So help me
So
God.
help me God.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.